場所。
あなたもここに住まない？
Source: Farming Life in Another World. Welcome back to Annie Recaps. Like and subscribe so you never miss our quality uploads. Hiraku wakes up earlier after dreaming of his death in his world. He goes out and greets everyone, noting that he didn't expect to ever live such a dream life. As a soul, MC faces the god that watches over the world. The god notes that he lived 39 years, but he had a cruel fate. He was betrayed by others and then fell ill with a terminal disease. The god decides to give him a second chance with a body that won't fall ill. The god finds it's his mistake for his awful life and wants to apologize and asks him if he has any wish he can also grant him. Thinking for a bit, Hiraku states he wants to try farming. He watched a show about it while he was sick and he wishes to try it. Additionally, he isn't good at getting along with others and wants to go farming somewhere where there aren't many people. The god states farming isn't his jurisdiction, but makes a call and arranges the things. He gets permission from the agriculture god to bestow upon Hiraku the power of the almighty farming tool. Hiraku wakes up in a forest and is happy to be healthy and be able to move again. He decides to start his farming life there and wonders how to use the almighty farming tool. The tool magically appears in his hand and Hiraku starts digging, noting that he isn't getting tired at all. He likes how soft the soil is and notes he can grow good vegetables there. Hiraku then realizes he first needs to worry about food and water and goes looking around. He sees a big tree and decides to make it a landmark and use it as a camp. He goes around looking for a river, but is unable to find any source of water. Hiraku then decides to dig and find underground water. He summons his tool, which turns into a shovel, and soon after he started digging, he ends up finding water. While preparing the ground around the tree, Hiraku looks for food, but is unable to find anything. Hiraku then looks at a smaller tree which eventually will get in his way, and decides to chop it down now. He summons his tool as an axe and almost gets crushed by the tree as he ends up cutting it with a single swing. He turns his tool into a hatchet and then cuts the tree into pieces. Before he realizes it, it is getting dark, and he turns his tool into a magnifying glass, but the sun sets. Having no way to start a fire, he carves a hole into the large tree and hides inside. Hiraku cuts some plates and cups. He realizes the moon provides enough light for him to see, but then sees that there are 2 moons and guesses he must be in another world. In the morning, Hiraku continues to clear the ground around the large tree and cuts some more trees. He feels it's time to get something to eat, and at that moment a large monster rabbit attacks him. But Hiraku manages to kill it in a single swing with his tool. After eating it, he decides to make a toilet and digs a large hole with an entrance, a gas release hole, and a tree trunk as a seat, as he couldn't relax. He ends up creating a small cabin around the toilet seat. MC then proceeds cultivating the land and imagines what he could cultivate. As he is done, he realizes he doesn't have any seeds to plant anything. The next morning, he is surprised to see that some plants are already starting to grow and wonders if it's due to the tool. He decides to build a wall and a ditch around the fields to protect them from the rabbits and other beasts. It takes him a few days to complete it, but he manages to kill another rabbit. The plants grow faster and MC is hoping that they are something he can eat and don't turn up being decorative flowers. Hiraku then builds a hut, but as he has a hard time lifting the wood up, he digs inside of it to give himself more vertical space. One day, he sees 2 dogs outside. As they look a bit rough and not aggressive, he invites them in and gives them some meat from a boar he just killed and wondered what to do with all that meat. He notices that one of them is pregnant, and after they ate, she started having birth pain. Hiraku realizes she is giving birth and wonders what to do. He ends up letting them stay in his house while he goes back into the hole for the night. In the morning, he checks on the dogs and sees that the female gave birth to 4 dogs. He gives them some more meat to celebrate it. Hiraku believed the dogs would leave after that, but they decided to hang around. As they liked the hut, Hiraku decides to build himself a new house. Hiraku ends up growing some tomatoes and enjoys them. The dogs do some hunting and protect the premises for Hiraku. He decides to name them Kuro and Yuki, male and female. The small ones he names Kuroichi, Kuroni, Kurosen, and Kuroyan. MC wants to build a storehouse, more vegetables, and many other things. Elsewhere, a girl wants to cross the mountain, but a man tells her it's dangerous and if she heard of the Forest of Death. The other side of the mountain is known like that, and it's because it's full of monsters. God decides to check on Hiraku on how he is doing, as he is sorry for giving him a life fit for a sinner. As he checks on him, he realizes he put him in a dangerous forest known as Forest of Death, as realizes he made a mistake yet again. Hiraku had realized that while preparing the ground for farming, if he wishes to plant certain plant, that plant magically starts growing. Hiraku is happy with his life and knows it's thanks to the gods that bestowed it to him. He makes some statues of the two gods so that he can thank them. Hiraku decides to try planting some fruits. While they grow, he plays with the dogs, realizing that without them, he would feel much more lonely. As the dogs also help him find his way back to his camp, Hiraku is able to travel further into the forest and eventually finds a river. He decides to make a tunnel and get water to his place, but since it's a 30 minutes walk distance, he will be digging for a while and decides to first make a toilet near the river. Hiraku figures that if he turns his tool into a wheelbarrow, he can run around with it and not get tired because of the tool. Hiraku also expanded his crop fields, adding more veggies. He grows soybeans and wants to eat them, but doesn't have salt. Time passes and the weather starts to get cold. Seeing snow in the mountains, Hiraku wonders how cold it gets here. He decides to start preparing for the winter and gathers some food and wood. A giant spider shows up. However, it's friendly and makes a handkerchief for Hiraku. The spider then decides to live in the large tree and loves eating potatoes. In exchange, the spider makes him clothes using the animal pelts Hiraku gives him. Gaining cloth, Hiraku feels more civilized as he now has a good bed, curtains, and clothes. Hiraku decides to name the spider Zabuton. The winter starts. Zabuton no longer comes down the tree and Hiraku guesses he is hibernating. Hiraku feels a bit lonely, but finally the summer comes. The small dogs had grown up and one day they left. However, they soon returned with partners. Soon, Zabuton showed up as well and also had kids. As there are now more mouths to feed, Hiraku decides to expand his crops again. Zabuton rings the alarm and Koro leads Hiraku into the forest. Koro takes him to a child girl who is naked and entangled in a spiderweb. The dogs and spiders are wary of her, but as she asks for help, Hiraku decides to help her. As he gets close, she jumps and bites his neck and then grows up into a young woman. Hiraku wonders if she is a monster. The dogs then attack her, and as they beat her up, she turns into a small girl again. Hiraku wonders if she is their enemy as she sucked his blood, but the girl explains she isn't, and she had to do it to recover her strength. As she used too much energy, she can't maintain her adult form and clothes. Hiraku wonders why the dogs attacked them, and she explains she wanted to take one of them, feeling bad for her. Hiraku lets her suck more of his blood so that she can recover. Hiraku takes her to his place. The girls are surprised to see a crop field in the forest, but also so many new crops. Hiraku gives her a tomato, and she ends up enjoying it and wants to try some other crops as well. The girl reveals her name is Rururushi, a vampire, and is excited to be able to try so many new veggies. Ru explains she is researching medical plans and ran away as she got in a fight with some nobles, who tried to steal her research. Since they kept chasing her and she heard of this forest, she decided to hide in it for a while until things calmed down, but also hoped to find some new plants to inspect. She is surprised that Hiraku is living in this dangerous forest and even tamed the beasts. He is also using some strange magic which allows him to create some tools, all of which excites her even more. Hiraku realizes how rare his chance is as this is the first person he came in contact with. As it may take even more to meet someone else, Hiraku decides to ask Ru to stay and live with him. Ru tries to explain that there are people after her and she is a vampire, but Hiraku doesn't care. Hiraku explains he came here to live alone as he can't deal with people, but now realized he doesn't want to live alone and isn't sure how much more he can handle. Ru agrees, explaining that she doesn't really have a place to go, although she feels embarrassed by his proposal. The next morning, Ru turns a little younger. Hiraku wonders why, and she explains that in this form, he will restrain himself from touching her, and Hiraku agrees. Hiraku explains he wants to grow some sweet potatoes next. He also tells that Ru is the first villager. Kuro disagrees, and Hiraku then corrects himself, stating she is more like the 30th villager. Ru wonders if Hiraku can grow some medical herbs. MC agrees to try. Ru states they need to find somehow the right seeds, but Hiraku states he doesn't need seeds. The story continues onward with a brand new day. Hiraku enjoys the morning breeze and looks forward to another day of farming. While he's the ideal of a morning bird, Ru wakes up as well, still acting drowsy and tired, the perfect ideal of a night owl. This also makes sense as Ru is a vampire, so they are not fond of the mornings. Despite that, Hiraku still enjoys having Ru living with him, as she has helped him tremendously in various ways, like setting up lights with her magic, helping Hiraku mine the right places for salt, and embarrassing him in the process because he passed by the salt while digging many times. For today's agenda, the two will check on how the fruit trees are growing. Ru looks forward to that, but needs to freshen up first, then she'll meet him there. The two see the trees and observe that the trees are growing as expected. Ru asks Hiraku if he transplanted the trees to the soil here, and he did because the fruit trees need more time to grow than the vegetables. Hiraku shares that the fruit trees he planted are orange and peach, and he hopes to plant chestnut trees sometime in the future. Ru shows her support for Hiraku by looking forward to seeing how the fruit trees turn out when it's time to harvest. The two spend their time peacefully outside by drinking Ru's herb teas. Hiraku enjoys the herb teas Ru makes, but does prefer green tea instead. Hiraku remembers a fun fact that oolong and black tea are all made from processing the same leaves. But the drinking time has cut short, as there is an announcement made long away, prompting Hiraku and Ru to come to see what's the matter. After running to the sounds of the alarm, the two see an angel bound and defenseless against a pack of wolves. The angel desperately apologizes to the pack of wolves for attacking them first, pissing them off in the process. Hiraku looks at this situation as déjà vu, as the angel screams for them two to help her, and they have no choice but to help. After freeing the angel from her restraints, she uses her magic to clean herself up and give her a cleaner appearance apart from her ragged clothes. She then quickly notices Ru and identifies her correctly, as she explains that she was trying to find Ru and take her back with her. As the angel screams her voice, she was then attacked again by a pack of wolves. After saving the angel for a second time, the three have a talk at Kikaru and Ru's residence, so they can break the ice as strangers. The angel ridicules Ru for choosing the forest to hide in out of all places, as the angel did not enjoy her experience as she immediately got ambushed by wolves. Ru sympathizes, as that is the same experience she went through her first time entering the forest. In fact, Ru learned the hard way that the wolves are resistant to magic. That is, even if you manage to hit them, which is unlikely. This seems to be the one thing they can get along at, how they almost got ended by the wolves as magic users. The angel asks Ru who is the man with her, and she introduces her to Hikaru, her husband. The angel is surprised after seeing Ru's blushed expression after saying that Hikaru is her husband, and looks at Hiraku to confirm what she says was true. Hiraku does say that Ru is right, and the angel was honestly not expecting that. Neither did Hiraku, as this was the first time Ru has called Hiraku her husband. The angel forgets to introduce herself and tells Hiraku that her name is Tia, an angel obviously. Hiraku asks if that means Tia serves God, and she proudly accepts that as a symbol of pride. But Ru calls Tia out and says that Tia's race is simply a warrior that is more muscle-brained than one who is clever or intelligent. Tia defends herself, as there was a brief period when angels were considered an object of worship. Hiraku asks a question: why is Tia chasing down Ru? Tia answers that there is a bounty on Ru because of all the damage she caused in town when she went on a rampage. Ru admits her crimes are true, but tries to shift the blame onto a snobby noble because they wanted to keep forcing Ru to make medicine and drugs for them. Their list of demands kept on piling up so much, Ru felt like she needed to teach them a lesson. But Tia reveals a personal flaw within Ru: her short temper. She always spends her time researching strange medicines and concoctions, so if something minor bothers her, she becomes a megumin and starts explosions. Rue argues back that it was only an accident and Tia is being overdramatic, but Taya restates her original claim that she shouldn't have blemished the noble name by causing havoc upon the town because of her own personal problems. The drama becomes lighter as Rue starts becoming more humble and admits her faults and how she's in this situation because she was trying to run away from Tia, who is stronger than her. She also admits that the first sign she saw the limit of her strength was when fighting the wolves. Rue comes up with an idea and asks Tia if she wants to live here with them in the forest. Rue gives Tia a tour around the crop fields and the orchard and introduced her to Zabuton, the spide. Tia may not like spiders as she immediately faints after meeting Zabuton. Tia asks if she'll have to do farm work, and she complains why an angel like her should dirty her hands doing commoner work like farming. Hiraku helps Tia harvest the crops and helps her learn that farming may be fun. After a long day of hard work, Tia rewards herself by trying a strawberry and finds it very sweet and delicious. After getting to experience a typical day of farming, Rue asks Tia again if she wants to stay with them, pressuring her that she can't handle the work on her own. Tia agrees, and the trio spends quality time farming, trying out the foods they harvested, and Tia shows off her magic by summoning a golem to carry the hard lumber while Rue uses her telekinesis magic to carry them. Rue commends Tia for being able to quickly adapt to farming life. Tia asks if Hiraku is considering expanding their crops, but he mentions that they're operating at full capacity, so there would be no time to harvest them unless they have more people to help with the harvest. Even if they can harvest all of that as a team of 3, there's another problem with how they'll be able to eat all those foods on their own without wasting them. Hiraku then sees the new puppies and how their horns are growing. It turns out that Kuro and Yuki's puppies also had puppies, so overpopulation may be a problem. To fix this, Hiraku expanded his land to build a dog area. His worry is that there are so many puppies, he may not be able to give out and remember all the puppies' names. But for Zabuton's children, her children spun wub parachutes to fly with the wind and explore their new lives on their own. In addition, Tia also says that she will leave for a few days, but does promise to return. She did keep her promise as when she returned, she came with 7 high elves. As the elves make their introductions, Hiraku observes that they are all related, and the elves wish to live with him, Rue, and Tia in the forest. Tia shares their sad backstory of how they used to have a home, but many of them were sent out to their deaths in the War of Humans. Now that their race is scattered, they could not find a proper home to call their own. Tia supports this idea, as she said that they could help him with farming. Hiraku allows this as long as they are all able to get along. But first off, Rue introduces the elves to Zabuton, and they faint right after. Rue also introduces the elves to the dogs, and they faint a second time. It seems that Rue enjoys seeing people's reactions after showing them to beasts that are somehow tamed. Now that everyone knows each other, Hiraku needs to build more homes for his new friends. The elves work on building a big house for them to live together. So they started by making a ditch and wooden fence, and next building their own toilet and garbage disposal area. Then the elves start to build the house from the bottom up, and it turns out that they know a lot about construction. So Hiraku helped them by digging holes, leveling the ground, and gathering lumber for them. The outcome was a big success, and it was so extraordinary, Hiraku grows a bit jealous of the little hut he calls home. Inside the big house, when a person enters, they seek a living room that also doubles as a dining room, so the elves could work on things together or eat together. On the far left and right sides of the house are storage areas. The second floor is where their individual rooms are. All lighting across the house is controlled by magic. Looking atop the second floor at the happy elves, Rue and Tia brings a smile to Hiraku's face, hoping that this could be a home where the elves can feel safe and at peace, like they always wanted. When the elves try farming, they quickly adapted to it as they enjoy doing the labor of a farmer. When Hiraku talks with Ria, the leader of the elves, so he can learn more about them, he finds out that they use fire and eat meat. He is shocked by this because he always thought that elves are one with nature, not relying on fire that can hurt the forest. Someone who rises at sunrise and sleeps at sunset, someone who eats berries and fruits from the forest, and someone who is a tree hugger and does not like to wear anything metallic like armor. Ria lectures Hiraku to not follow that stereotype and to stop thinking that the forest is a heaven land, as Mother Nature can be crueler than one believes. But Ria does want to thank Hiraku again for allowing them to live with him, and he feels the same way thanks to how helpful and resourceful they are. The elves continue to show their capabilities by building a furnace to do blacksmithing and baking foods like bread. As everyone is enjoying the bread that the elves made, Hiraku feels motivated to expand his wheat fields, but he asks Rue if his home's land is someone's property, even though it should have been asked a long time ago. It turns out that the land may belong to the demon lord. Rue reassures Hiraku that since his home and settlement were not supported by outside factors, the property can be claimed as his thanks to his self-sufficiency. Later in the evening, Rue, Tia, and Ria start having a conversation about Hiraku and comment on how incredible he is. A human who was able to tame all those inferno wolves and a demon spider. Ria wonders if the soil that he planted all his crops on is capable of producing the high-quality products they have made all this time, but Rue doesn't know how to answer that, as she never asked him that question. Tia chuckles at how one of his weaknesses is his lack of knowledge about this world, as he always thought of elves as a race that didn't use fire or eat meat. Not only that, but Hiraku doesn't know much about angels either after meeting Tia. If he doesn't know much about those races, it may be a possibility that he may not know more about the other various races in this world. They call him a mysterious fellow, as despite his lack of knowledge about their world, he is capable of doing magnificent things like befriending violent beasts, something not an ordinary person could dream of accomplishing. As the girls continue talking throughout the night, Hiraku spends his time crafting more wooden dining utensils. As he finished on his cup, he then has a thought about how he hasn't progressed on building a waterway yet. Sometime in the road, he will have to build that waterway, especially if the population in his land will increase. Now that he has more help from the elves, maybe building that waterway can now be a possibility. But for now, he goes to sleep as he knows he'll need the energy for what tomorrow brings for him. We'll continue the next part in next few weeks. Meanwhile, subscribe and watch our other contents posted in our channel. Until then, stay safe. Bye.